Welcome everybody to our celebration of Black excellence and Black invention, celebrating the bookmark created by Dr. Reverend Carolyn Ransom Scott. Before we get started, we have some music for you by Domingo and Friends. They'll be singing Ain't No Sunshine by Bill Withers.
Let me give some more information. This is good information people need to know. When you come to a traffic light and it says stop, do you know there was a Black man who invented that stoplight? His name was Garnett Morgan. And Tim is over there playing away on that guitar, going to town, doing his thing. But there was another Black man who invented that guitar. And his name was Robert Fleming Jr. Just more information. As we go along, I'll tell you more stuff that you use every day and don't even know it. Okay. Sunshine when he's gone. It's not warm when he's away. Ain't no sunshine when he's gone, and his house just ain't no home anytime he goes away. Wonder this time where he's gone. Wonder if he's gonna stay. Ain't no sunshine when he's gone, and his house just ain't no home anytime he goes away. And I know, 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 I know. They ought to leave that man alone, but ain't no sunshine when it's gone. Ain't no sunshine when it's gone.
We'll get started in just a minute. First, enjoy the music with Domingo and Friends. I know, 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 I know. Hey, ought to leave that man alone, but ain't no sunshine when it's gone. Ain't no sunshine when he's gone. Ain't no sunshine. my baby goes away.
Thank you all. That was a wonderful Domingo and Friends, and we have one more for you. Next, I'll be singing Use Me, another tune by Bill Withers. That appointed day. They keep trying to tell me all you want to do is use me. Oh, but my answer, get all that use me stuff. If you only knew, you'd wish that you were in my shoes. Just keep on using me. Use me. Yeah, use me. My sister, she sat me right down, she talked to me. She meant well, yes she did. Yeah, but when our talk was through, I said, sister, if you only knew, you'd wish that you were in my shoes. Just keep on using me. To use me. Yeah, to use me. Keep on using me to use me. Yeah, to use me.
getting used. Oh, just keep on using me till you use me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm going to clap again for our virtual audience. We heard Domingo and Friends, filmed recently at the Corrette Auditorium here at the San Francisco Public Library, where we are based. I'm Shauna Sherman, the manager for the African American Center at the San Francisco Public Library. And on behalf of the San Francisco Human Rights Commission and the San Francisco Public Library, I want to welcome everybody here to our program celebrating the Black Excellence, Black Inventions bookmarks created by Dr. Reverend Carolyn Ransom Scott. So we've got a jammed-packed program for you today of music and conversation around the importance of learning about Black invention here. We, as I mentioned, are broadcasting from the San Francisco Bay Area. And before we get started, I want to invite Jessica Campos from the Human Rights Commission up to the mic to read our land acknowledgement for the Ramaytush Ohlone people whose land we occupy. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we take time to acknowledge our Native American brothers and sisters, but also call upon our ancestors to give thanks and to remind us that we are walking through the pathways on their shoulders of all that they have created for us. So with that, we acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of the land and in accordance with their tradition, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community and by affirming their rights as First People.
Thank you, Jessica. And now we're going to move on and acknowledge our African American ancestors. This is a practice that was started at the reparations task force meetings here in San Francisco, and something that we definitely want to follow, especially at this time when we are celebrating our inventor ancestors. So I'll read the African American land appreciation. We honor the gifts, resilience, and sacrifices of our Black ancestors who toiled the land, built the institutions that established the city's wealth and freedom, and survived anti-Black racism despite never being compensated nor fully realizing their own sovereignty. We acknowledge this exploitation of not only labor, but of humanity, and through this process, we are working to repair some of the harms done by the public and private actors. Because of their work, we are here and will invest in the descendants of their legacy. Before we get started, I'm just going to run through a couple slides. Because I know you guys want to get right to our program with Dr. Scott. Along with bookmarks that are available at all San Francisco public libraries, we have an exhibit on the third floor of the main library called Black Excellence, Black Invention, which will run through May 7th. And the picture here on the slides are little placards that can be found at all our libraries that highlight inventions that we can see in our everyday lives that were created by Black people. For example, the elevator, the doors for the elevator, the automatic doors invented by Alexander Miles in the main library. We have a placard up in our elevators showing that elevator doors were invented by Alexander Miles. So please come to the main library and check out our exhibit on Black invention. And continuing on in celebration of our Black invention bookmarks, We are hosting Stanford Library Archives and Kathy Cotton, a digital storyteller, on Tuesday, March 8th at noon, to talk about the importance of archiving information about inventors. We all owe a legacy to Henry Baker, who researched Black inventors back in the turn of the century and wouldn't know information if he hadn't done that. So what we want to do is encourage people to continue to archive the innovations of African Americans. And in this program, we're talking about innovations of African Americans in Silicon Valley. And now on to our program. I want to thank again the San Francisco Human Rights Commission for their partnership in this event. Previous versions of the Inventors bookmark were created by the Human Rights Commission, and we are grateful for their support in bringing this project to the library and celebrating it around the city. Moderating our panel discussions today and introducing the creator of these important bookmarks is Mr. Kelly Wright. Mr. Wright is an award-winning American journalist based in Washington, D.C. He currently co-anchors The World Tonight on BNC, the Black News Channel, and he is also the host and executive producer of The Kelly Wright Show. I'm going to turn it over to you now, Mr. Kelly. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for that, Shauna, and good afternoon to each and every one of you. I hope that wherever you are, you're safe and well, taking care of yourselves because you matter. And hopefully all of you can hear me loud and clear. And this is a fantastic occasion. We talk about Black History Month, but what I like about this program is that we're talking about Black history 365 days of the year. And I want to give a lot of honor and praise to the great people of the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, as well as the San Francisco Public Library, for having the foresight to welcome Dr. Carolyn Ransom Scott, who came up with this brilliant idea and has been doing it for many years. We'll be talking to her momentarily. And this is an opportunity for us to be celebrating Black excellence and Black inventions. And we can hear from Black scientists, educators, creators, and descendants of Black inventors in a celebration of Black innovation and a conversation so important to always be able to talk to each other at that table of brotherhood about why it is so important to highlight these Black contributions. And before we get started, we want to hear now, well, we're already started, and thanks for all the great music that's been done up till now, but now we want to hear from some good old singing from the church. It's my pleasure to introduce to you a wonderful choir or chorale, the Third Baptist Church Chorale. Let me just say something before getting into their song, which is Lift Every Voice. Third Baptist Church, if I can just talk briefly about it, they're part of this Black excellence. They're part of the legacy of greatness in our country as it relates to the Black American experience. They brilliantly have made a list of long achievements, contributing to the contributions, not only in San Francisco, but throughout the nation and thereby the world. Dignity and the respect accorded to every human being by the community it takes pride in its rich history. They have a long line of pioneers who have had great commitment, fortitude, and endurance established and nurtured with the first Negro, as it was called back then, Baptist Church west of the Rocky Mountains, through many prosperous years. Through all the toils and through all the tears, they have learned that we've come this far by faith. And so it gives me great pleasure to have them lift every voice and sing. Ladies and gentlemen, right now, the Third Baptist Chorale.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for that wonderful rendition of James Weldon Johnson's Lift Every Voice and Sing. Many people have referred to it as being the Negro national anthem, but it is an anthem of praise. It's an anthem of inspiration and excellence and motivation and encouragement. And if we need some inspiration and encouragement, that was the song to deliver it. Talking about all the things that we've been through as a race of people since coming to this country in 1619, and then advancing to where we are today. And might I add that through this Joseph experience, rising up as Josephs to help build this nation and to give excellence, great contributions. And that's why this is so important. But you know what? You can't have it without someone inspiring it. And so the person who really inspired all of this to get the San Francisco Public Library, as well as the San Francisco Human Rights Commission on board with all this, was someone who would not give up in her quest to let everybody know, black, white, brown, yellow, red, purple, green, wherever you are, she was always letting you know about the excellence of Black Americans. Now that my good friend, the Reverend Dr. Carolyn Ransom Scott, she joins us right now. Carolyn, it's so good of you to be part of this. You are the moderator, but you're also the dreamer who dreamed the dream. And now that that dream is becoming fulfilled and accomplished for not only San Franciscans, but throughout the land, throughout the nation. And might I add, because it's virtual in this time of digital sharing, that it can go global to remind people of this rich heritage and this rich experience. So let's talk about how you got involved in your personal quest to recognize and distribute the Black Inventions or Inventors bookmark.
Kelly, I can only start where I stand and have stood. Scripture says, hope deferred makes the heart faint. It makes it sick, but when desires are met, it leads to a tree of life. And I would say what Dr. King said, out of a mountain of despair, a stone of hope. And those stones through life for me have seemed to propel and inspire me. There's a multitude of reasons and things that have inspired me, stories of despair, situations around me of hopelessness and helplessness that propelled me to keep going. And then as scripture says, but hope that is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what they already have? But if we hope for what we don't yet have, then we wait patiently and do our part. And just doing whatever I can inspires and it propels me not to give up, not to give in, not to give over, and just not to stop, never give up. I've learned we are seen through the eyes of many or uninformed cultures. We're seen as a nation of non-contributors to society and the world around us. We're ideally viewed as a shiftless and aimless culture, taking and asking, yet not contributing. Opinions all due to a lack of truth or the nation's true stories in America's history about Black and African American contributions, science and inventions of innovators, the world, and for those around us. The result is, Kelly, we're devalued, destroyed, damaged with a dismantling of hope and with gentrification. Yet, the hope that was kept alive within us as a resilient nation through the Lord lives on in spite of devastation. That inspires me to keep going. My grandfather, Reverend E.C. Early Clyde Ransom, attended Wiley College in Marshall, Texas. Reverend E.C. Ransom served as a student body leader, and he was there during the years the Wiley College did the Great Debate. And it was the first colored college debate team, which for 10 years held first place nationally against Harvard, Yale, Princeton, University, and others with victories. To my knowledge, Reverend Ransom was not one of the debate team members. He became a pastor, clergy leader, church planter throughout Texas, while two of my aunts, one great aunt, were missionaries, caring for the social and spiritual concerns of Texans. Those lives propelled me, along with so many others, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, John Robert Lewis, Dr. King, Coretta Scott King, so many, Dorothy Heights, so many propelled me to do what I do now. I was born here in San Francisco during the mid-40s. I can still remember as a child, a preschooler, in the early 50s, hearing my mom talking on a three-way phone, which was called a party line then. I remember her getting often sad news and senseless news about lynchings, beatings, cross burnings, tar and featherings of relatives and friends. I heard her gasp. And I also heard her say, Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy. My dad, a graduate of Wiley College, a Sunday school teacher, worked for the Navy shipyard, Banana Boats, and the United Airlines as a custodian, and later on for the city and county. But those engines of his jobs was food on the table, clothes on our backs, and it took care of his retirement. That inspired me. So may I imagine and say one day to our ask, there will be an immediate reply of yes, without the response, what do they want now? As if we were non-contributors begging for something without building or doing something to make this nation greater and a better place for all peaceably. And lastly, Kelly, I'm inspired by a story that I'll share. I attended Raphael Elementary School in the 50s, now called in San Francisco Rosa Parks Elementary. We were asked to do a book report, Kelly, a biography. My parents in our home had Encyclopedia Britannica Juniors. We had Black history books about heroes in the African-American race. I turned in a book report on John W.C. Handy, but I got an F. And I was told by the teacher, you cannot do a book report on Negroes. I went home confused, hurt, shared it with my mom. She put on her Sunday dress. She put her Sunday coat on. She put her hat on. She dressed me up. We walked up to the school. She sat me in the hallway on a bench, went in and had a quiet, calm, peaceful discussion with the teacher. I got an A. I learned you don't give up. And I learned that we can sit down and peaceably discuss with truth. And that truth has propelled me to understand that we should never give up our desires. It leads to the tree of life. And I'm so grateful, this bookmark and so much more. Thank you, San Francisco, HRC, our Human Rights Commission. Thank you, San Francisco Public Library, because here we are today, just because of a truth that I shared with you. And we're like family now. And I'm so grateful, Kelly. Thank you for your presence and everyone else that has come aboard for this time. And God bless you. Thank you.
Well, Carolyn, that is a fantastic story of truth, justice, and peace. And I like the way your mother exemplified dignity and grace under pressure, under fire. And I like the fact that you were able to visualize that through your eyes as a young child and as a young daughter to rise to the level that you have in terms of your education, but more importantly, in terms of the empowerment and inspiration and encouragement that you continue to willfully give to people everywhere, even when they're not asking for it. You've been able to shine that light in darkness, and you've been able to show love in the place of hate. And this bookmark, it might seem like some small little thing, but it really is big. My grandmother used to tell me it's the little things that count. So thank you for doing this little thing that has now developed and spawned into a great thing. And you and I have been serving as the co-moderators of this. And we recently recorded an interview with 3 people that you know very well. And we're going to show some of that right now before we get into the other great panelists that we have here today. Carolyn, why don't you introduce Judge Chania Wright, Judge Carolyn Wright Sanders, and Captain Robert Monroe, and let them know what this is about. Well, we can see it right there. So let's roll with that, and we'll be back with Carolyn. I will join you after this.
It's important to talk about justice from the perspective of Black excellence. And joining us now are 2 of our panelists. We have Judge Carolyn Wright, and we also have Judge Tania Wright. I wanted to ask you both a couple of questions about Black excellence and why it's so important that why we should shine a light on the Black inventors, bookmarkers, across cultural barriers for every race, for every culture in America, so that they can learn about the contributions that Black Americans have made to this country and to the world. And what can you tell me from your perspective of how this impacts our judicial system and how we might perceive or look at Black men and women? Dr. Carolyn, I'll begin with you. Actually, Judge Carolyn, let me begin with you.
Yes. Now in our country, there is a tremendous battle taking place against truth and history. And this battle, quite frankly, is an assault on inclusion. It's an assault on democracy. It's an assault on justice. We cannot erase our history, even when it's ugly, simply because we can't afford to make the mistakes of the past again. From the standpoint, I guess, of the judiciary, it's an issue of more knowledge. The more knowledge that you have about other people, places, and things, I think it certainly helps to alleviate. We all come with biases and prejudices, but it certainly helps to minimize those. We bring those into situations where we make judgments about other people. We bring those prejudices and biases, jurors, judges. It can impact things like, for instance, we're talking about inventions. Inventions involve intellectual property rights. If you don't have any knowledge of Black inventors as a judge or as a juror, if somebody violates your intellectual property right, if you come into the position of making a judgment about the value of that person's invention, you may substantially devalue it because of your own prejudice and mindset that I don't know any Black inventors. Well, if I don't know any Black inventors and someone is now appearing before me claiming to be the inventor, I might, devalue that. And that has tremendous economic, a tremendous economic impact. It also has a tremendous emotional and I guess societal impact. When you have a race of people where you totally, you have appropriated in many instances, for instance, during the time of slavery, African Americans were owned, the slaves were owned by their slave masters. Therefore, their inventions were owned by their slave masters. If there was a patent, the patent was received in the name of the slave owner. So you have lost the history of a whole society of people who were contributors. Not only did they contribute for free, I mean, then there is not even any historical recognition of the intellectual, of not just their physical labor, free labor, but now we're talking about you've also appropriated their intellect. And so I think it's very, very important. It's also important to the people who come, as I said, through the judicial system. Even on the criminal side, I talked about the civil side and how it can impact value and have a dollar figure. But there are so many young people who come through the criminal justice system. And unfortunately, they are feeling hopeless. And there is something, I think that this information can be disseminated through probation offices. I think, and in many ways, it can also be disseminated, probably can't be disseminated in court, but it can be disseminated through judicial education, etc. So at any rate, I will stop at this point to say that those are the many ways that I see how it has its impact in the judicial system.
Well said, Judge Carolyn. Thank you for that. And Judge Tanny, I want to go to another part of this justice system and the fact that it's important to recognize the Black African-American experience as being one of excellent, and how these bookmarks will help do that and lean towards perhaps, as Judge Carolyn was talking about, more fairness in the courtroom throughout our judicial system. But what about just impacting the lives of those who come, as she was talking about in the criminal aspect, improving the lives of African-American men and women before they even get there in a court of law, to fight for their rights or to be defendants in a trial? How important is this just to put out there so that young people know their history? Young people, Black and white, know the history, and that potential jurors may know the history and the contributions that the Black Americans continue to make.
In this country, like it or not, we are different flowers from the same garden. And yes, we are flowers, not weeds. We are Americans. And Black history is American history. And I think that the knowledge of our valuable contributors and contributions could be one route towards greater respect and appreciation of Black people in general. Black history is important, and it is important that the valuable contributions of Black people be easily and publicly accessible. All people can benefit by the knowledge that Black people are valuable and have made valuable contributions in this country in arts, entertainment, human rights, civil rights, social welfare, economics, and politics, as well as inventions and innovations in the areas of health, science, and technology. These contributions benefit society as a whole. They benefit the human race. And so as much as benefiting African Americans within the justice system, I do see them as a possible tool to help our children stay out of the justice system, except as they might want to be judges and attorneys or prosecutors or other court employees. Showcasing Black innovators in ways that Black children can understand may allow them to see their possibilities. Our history is rich and full of a myriad of heroes of whom we should be extremely proud. Even now, it fills me with pride as I began to learn more about the valuable contributions of Black people, even at this stage in my life. I wear a lot of hats, being a member of the judiciary and of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and as an administrative law judge for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. In addition, I have sat on several boards, one being a group called IBRAXIS, where the mission was to encourage and facilitate and stoke the interest of middle school students in underserved minority communities towards STEM education, that is science, technology, engineering, and math. And we did so through our volunteer scientists that we call scienteers. I'm a very proud godmother right now. My goddaughter was introduced to scientists and innovative thinkers at a very early age, and now is an A student and a senior at the New York Institute of Technology. She's a chemistry major whose desire is to develop drugs to eradicate cancer. Specific knowledge and study of inventors, and particularly Black inventors, may open young minds and help Black children identify and create new possibilities for themselves and perhaps even for the world. There is a potential to build confidence and to improve their sense of identity and abilities in life and career choices. And creative thinking coupled with mentoring might even advance peaceful conflict resolution in schools and may be a venue to explore our efforts to disrupt any school to prison pipeline where children who are behaving badly in school are then funneled into the juvenile justice system. And so I just want to add that these accomplished individuals, inventors, are role models for the nation, not simply for Black men, women, and children.
That's wonderful. I'm so inspired and touched by both of you, Judge Tania and Judge Wright. Both names are right. No relation to me, by the way, but we are related, aren't we? We're interrelated, interconnected in this world through God and through the faith and hope and love that we try to display to everybody on each and every day. Judge Carolyn, Judge Tania, thank you so much. I want to move on to another topic. And Judge Tania, you kind of led to that when you talked about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, because a lot of that goes into these Black inventors and the Black excellence that they displayed, and with these bookmarks reminding people of how great of a contribution that Black Americans continue to make to the United States and the world. So let me bring in Captain Robert Monroe, who of course is a retired pilot for United. And when I think pilot, a lot of times, Captain Robert, you know, a lot of Black Americans think about Tuskegee, the Tuskegee Airmen, but there's also the hidden figures who work behind the scenes on the science, the technology, and the engineering and the math to propel us into space. And win in the space race. If you go back to President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, who had envisioned that one day a man would be upon the moon, and he wanted to be sure that it was someone from the United States. But behind the scenes, so much was going on with Black Americans, and they were ostracized until the truth came out. So Captain Robert, can you talk to us about that and talk to us about someone by the name of Christine Darden as well?
I have a heavy load on my shoulders to lift this morning to a remarkable woman, like you said, Dr. Christine Darden. She is my aunt, and believe it or not, I have known her work at NASA all my life. She started there since when I was 10 years old, back in 1967. And to me, that I always had an interest in aviation. I think it was a mutual feeling. We just both had that inspiration. So I can't say she motivated me into being what I was today. But actually being a pilot was my plan B. I actually wanted to be an astronaut. And thinking back on many of talks we've had over the years, she actually applied to the astronaut program back in the 80s. However, unfortunately, with the, I believe it was the Challenger that had the tragic accident in 1986, kind of brought the astronaut program to an end for decades. So that kind of took her back into the engineering side of NASA, and took me on through the Air Force into the private sector of airline pilot. But with that being said, I never even heard of the Hidden Figures until about 8 or 9 years ago, when my aunt told me she was being put in a book called The Hidden Figures. And I said, well, what is that? And she said, although she spent months trying to explain what was going on, and being interviewed by the author, Margot Lee Shetterly, I still really didn't know what they were talking about until the movie came out, and then it all came clear. And so even though I lived amongst the giants with NASA, I had no idea, as you put it, what was going on behind closed doors. My aunt was not in the movie simply because she was not working with NASA during that time frame. The movie was actually time frame between 1961, 1963, with the height of the space race. And she did not start working for NASA until 1967, right, a couple of years before the landing on the moon. She knew all three ladies that worked there. As a matter of fact, Katherine Johnson actually wrote her a letter of recommendation and actually put the seed in her head to apply for NASA. She started as what they called in the movie human computers. They were mathematicians, and basically they just cranked out the numbers for, that the aerospace engineers provided them with the wind tunnel testing and such. Well, within 6 years, my aunt was able to become the second aerospace engineer at NASA, right behind Mary Jackson. And from there on, she, a few years later, she actually went back to school, fluid dynamics, and soon began working. And this led to a 27 years out of her 40-year career of working with sonic boom theory. And the biggest problem with sonic boom, and why most airplanes do not fly sonic boom, we've all heard the sonic boom over land when a plane breaks the sound barrier, the big boom boom. And if it's close enough, it'll break your windows out and all that. So obviously they could not fly airplanes like that over land, where for 27 years, her career was to reduce the boom sound. So eventually someday that the aircrafts will be able to fly supersonic over land and get you to your destination in half the time. And so, for example, we all know about the Concorde flown by British Airways and France, I guess France Airways. But believe it or not, most people didn't realize they could only fly supersonic over the oceans and not over land. So even if they flew from New York to San Francisco, it would be a normal 5-hour flight. But with her hard work, it is eventually paying off now. And as a matter of fact, you may have not heard that United Airlines has just put in an order for 50 supersonic aircrafts. Hopefully they will have them online and flying by the end of the decade. So unbelievable. You know, this has been 50 years in the making. And again, they were you can actually find it on YouTube that they're talking about it, and they're giving you all the data where from San Francisco to Hong Kong usually takes 14 and a half to 15 hours. And believe me, I've done that for years. And down to less than 7 hours one way from San Francisco, Hong Kong. Going from New York to London, 3 hours. I mean, just a quantum leap in flying time. So remarkable ladies, all the ladies were remarkable, and it has been quite a journey for her.
Quite a journey indeed. And Captain Robert, thank you for sharing that with us, the personal insights that you have and how it helped influence your life. And it goes to the core of what Judge Carolyn was saying, what Judge Tania was saying about these markers, about Black inventors, and how if that gets into the public through a book, through a library, it opens up the discussion for understanding how much accomplishment has been made by Black Americans and how great the contribution has been. But in addition to that, panelists, Judge Tania, Judge Carolyn, and Captain Robert, in addition to that, it really underscores the value of keeping the greatness of Black Americans, not only before the eyes of young Black boys and girls, but before the world. Black, white, brown, yellow. I like how you said, Judge Tania, that we're all flowers from a beautiful garden, and we're not weeds. So you don't pull us up and throw us out. You actually cultivate it and you allow us to blossom. So before we close, I'd like to hear from all three of you again about the essence of understanding Black excellence and African-American Black inventor bookmarks, and the fact that San Francisco is stepping forward to shining this light in a dark world that has been attacking Black history, attacking critical race theory, but not really understanding the need for instructing people on real history, as messy as history can be, and yet finding this hopeful message that we've seen through what Dr. Carolyn Scott Ransom has been able to do with the San Francisco Public Library. So Judge Carolyn, we'll circle back to you first to hear some insight from you, and then we'll go to Judge Tania and then end with you, Captain Robert.
As Dr. Scott pointed out, this is a lesson that should be and should have been incorporated in all of our history books. Unfortunately, it was not during our time. It is not in today's time. But it's so crucial because we're still fighting this fight of equality. And when there are implications that people of color, African Americans, are not contributors, that we didn't have any part in making America great, that, and then there's no recognition of, again, the physical labor, the intellectual property that was already invested by African Americans, and there's no recognition to the rest of the world. I think this project is crucial, and I think that it is timely, and I just support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you for that, Judge Tania. Judge Tania.
I'm with you. Carter G. Woodson created what was then called Negro History Week back in 1926, because Black history was not being actively taught in most schools or mainstream institutions. And Woodson viewed Black History Week not only as a vehicle for commemoration, but a vehicle for transformation. And you were asking at one point about jurors, and will knowledge of contributions of Black people make the pool of jurors fair? At the very least, it could broaden perspectives. And when I visited South Africa, we talked a lot about Ubuntu, which is the concept and belief in compassion and common humanity and common bonds. I am because you are, I am because we are. Humanity towards one another and keeping human dignity at the core of everything that we do. It's a totally, wonderful concept. And I think that learning about cultures, it helps us to see our likenesses and our shared humanity. I think knowledge in this case, the valuable contributions of Black people may help others, such as jurors, see with a better lens and gain new insight and attitude and perspectives, and help to diminish some stereotypes and misperceptions, which may lead to some prejudices and unfairness. So I have no empirical data to offer in that regard, but I believe that when people know better, they can and sometimes do better, and that they should at least be given the opportunity to do so.
Absolutely, Judge. Write the vision and make it plain, and let people see it. So, they can, the light can light their path. And Captain Robert, final words from you, sir.
Well, listening to these ladies so eloquently, I was just thinking back, and I mentioned earlier that growing up with my aunt at NASA, I didn't see anything extraordinary about that. That's just the way it was. If you actually read the book Hidden Figures, and I've spoken to Margot Shutterly on numerous occasions through my aunt, but she actually made the same analogy when, not analogy, but the same assumption when she was asked why she wrote the book. And there's an interesting story behind it, because her father actually worked at NASA as well as a scientist. And she came home one day, years after being on the workforce, with her husband, and her father and her sat down, and her father pulled out some old pictures of all the African Americans working at NASA back in the 50s and 60s. And he was, they were reminiscing about this and that. And her husband actually came up and asked them what they were doing. And she says, well, these are all the people that worked at NASA back in the 50s and 60s. And he says, well, I didn't know African Americans worked at NASA back in those days. And she goes, yeah, we all lived in the community. Everybody got up and went to work in the morning, came home at night, sometimes late at night. And he says, I had no idea, didn't know anything about it. And that's actually what prompted Margot to write the book. It's in the book, one from Margot on the reason why she wrote the book after she had this discussion with her husband. And the second one was one of my favorite ones that a lot of, especially today's generation, does not understand how people back then accomplished what they could, because physically there was a lot bigger potholes back in those days, a lot higher walls. And one of my favorite quotes I remember was from Dorothy Vaughan, which is in the book, and she always said, what I could change, I changed. What I couldn't change, I endured. And I'm sure we can all relate to that. We know we can't change everything, but we change a little bit at a time. I belong to an organization called OBAP, or the Organization Black Professional Aerospace Professionals. And for over 30 years, I've been going into schools. I've been working with aviation camps. And I have young people of color today who are pilots, and I'm not saying it's all on me, but I gave them the blueprint and the road, and with the help of the organizations, I'm very dedicated to that. But I'm not going to call this plagiarism, but I'm taking this word for word when Margot Lee Shetterly was asked why she wrote this book outside of being motivated by her husband. And she, as I quote, she wrote, "I was determined to prove their existence and their talent in a way that meant they would never again be lost to history. What I wanted was for them to have the grand sweeping narrative that they deserved, the kind of American history that belongs to the Wright brothers and the astronauts, to Alexander Hamilton and Martin Luther King Jr., not as a separate history, but as part of the story we all know. Not at the margins, but at the very center, the protagonists of the drama, and not just because they are Black or because they are women, but because they are part of the American epic."
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. That was great. I hope all of you who watched that first panel really enjoyed it. So Carolyn, when you see and hear what they said, I'm still touched by Judge Tanya Wright's statement about how we're a flower in a garden, and how we're not weeds to be pulled up. And I still get back to the fact that what you've done with these wonderful bookmarks, along with the San Francisco Public Library and the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, you've enabled people to look at the seeds that have been planted. And those bookmarks can be the seeds that go into the next generation, and the generation and our fathers' children and our children's children, to enlighten them and to educate them and inform them of the great things that we have done as Americans. And I know we're going to take a slight break right here, but I'd like you to introduce our next break, because these are friends of yours who can bring us some great music. And we talked about STEM. Well, music is also part of our not only our ancestry, it's in our DNA. We've contributed so much in terms of jazz and gospel, the most indigenous art form, if you will, musically, that's been transported throughout the world. Even hip hop. I remember covering the war in Iraq, and while I was covering the war in Iraq, I got to see turn on the TV in a war zone, mind you, where bombs are going off, war is hell. But there was a little piece of heaven from America when I could turn on the TV and see Oprah, and then I could listen out of my window when the bombs weren't falling or we weren't running around trying to find out what's going on. I could hear hip hop music from the young Iraqi children who were playing hip hop music, and the cars driving by. So again, showing our influence, showing our contributions to history. Carolyn, take it from there, because what my point is that we have STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, but then you put that A in there for the arts, and then you have STEAM. And that's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And we're never, ever going to run out of steam.
Kelly, this has been so inspiring, listening to each one again. And it just says over and over to me, our resilience in spite of the devastation, in spite of being devalued and overlooked and just ignored as a people. And yet we can lovingly invent and create things that make life easier, more comfortable, that literally lifts a standard and a way of living around or with one another. And literally, it makes the world that even would despise you, it gives them a better life. And perhaps the thought was, if they live better, maybe they'll act better. But still, the opportunity, as our Chief Justice Wright said, everyone, and it may have been Judge Tanya, deserves the right to know more. And this is giving the opportunity to learn more, learn better, be well informed, better informed about true history for America and American history. It's not just a Black history. This is Black African American. It's America's history. And I'm just so inspired by this space and the conversations that are moving on. I want to take that and move. I enjoyed so much Domingo and Friends, and I love our baby boomers. They're so kicked back and they just love having fun. They're not as quick and as speedy as the our rappers and hip hop, but the music has a message. And coming from our Domingo and Friends, we have a young woman, amazing, Nate the soul singer. Nate is coming to us. She is an actress, she's a performer. Nate is a young woman with passion in whatever she's doing and taking part in. And surely in times like these, we need to think about our anchor. We need to think about what carries us. What are we standing on? How are we standing on it? Is it secure? Does your anchor hold? In times like these, sung by Nate, the soul singer. Welcome her, everyone, if you will.
Ladies and gentlemen, that panel discussion, amazing, huh? I think that we're thinking differently already and even considering going forward what it would feel like, look like, and how things will be done. We are going to welcome with open arms and just ears, our mind, soul, and spirit, Nate, the soul singer, our Bay Area's finest, amazing, wonderful actress and performer, is going to sing for us in times like these. Nate, come forward. Welcome, Nate.
Thank you so much, Dr. Scott.
In times like these, we need a savior. In times like these, we need an anchor. Be very sure. Be very sure your anchor holds and grips the solid ground. In times like these, we need a Bible. In times like these. Be not idle. Be very, 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 very sure. Be very sure your anchor holds and grips the solid rock. This rock is Jesus. Bless you. Bésame mucho. Each time we kiss, our music divine. Bésame, bésame mucho. Love me, my darling, and say that you'll always be mine. Dearest one, if you should leave me, each little wing would take wing and my life would be through. Bésame, bésame mucho. Love me, my darling, and say that you'll always be mine. This story is something new, my arms unfolding, you never knew love like before. Whoever thought I'd be holding you close to me, whispering it's you I adore. Dearest one, if you should leave me, each little wing would take wing and my life would be through. Bésame, bésame mucho. Love me, my darling, and say that you'll always be mine. mine.
Oh, that was a great musical break. Everybody give some applause and for our wonderful musical guests. And I'm Kelly Wright. I'm joined by Dr. Carolyn Scott Ransom, and we are celebrating Black history in a very magnificent way as we have a celebration of Black excellence and Black inventions. And we are going into our next phase of having our panel discussion. And Carolyn, I love music, as you know, and music has always been part of my life. But another part of our music and what writes the notes of our legacy is the awesomeness of the Black men and women who have contributed to our greatness, not only for our race, but also for all of us in terms of this nation. It was Carter G. Woodson, of course, that we heard Judge Jania Wright talking about that. I just want to read a quote from him, if I can get to it real quickly. He said, "For me, education means to inspire people to live more abundantly, to learn to begin with life as they find it and make it better." And that's what I get from what you've been able to contribute to the wonderful people in San Francisco through the Human Rights Commission there, as well as the San Francisco Public Library. So as we get into phase 2 of our presentation right now, first of all, I want to thank all of the guests who are watching this wherever you are. We hope that you're safe and well, and we hope that you're really learning to love yourself a little bit more as you look at yourself through history. So Carolyn, with you with me right here, let's bring in our next panelist. And of course, you can add to their definitions of what they do and description of what they do. Joining us is Dr. Cheryl Davis. And Carolyn, tell us about Cheryl Davis, Dr. Davis.
Well, Dr. Cheryl Davis, the change maker. Dr. Cheryl Davis, the pace setter. She sets a pace. Dr. Cheryl Davis, the storyteller. Dr. Cheryl Davis, the lover of children and won't let go of the message, read, 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 and read, and read. And she not only says it, but she does the reading, and she shares what she's reading and brings others into that setting. Dr. Cheryl Davis, community-centered initiatives, named executive director of the San Francisco Human Rights Commission in 2016. Dr. Davis is a passionate advocate for equity, access, and educational opportunity, not for one, not for some, but for all. We have Dr. Frederick Gaines. When I talk about education, Professor Gaines is the chair of ethnic studies at the College of San Mateo. Professor Gaines grew up in Oklahoma, in the very small town of Prague, Oklahoma, where as late as the late 70s, he witnessed his extended family living in 100-year-old housing without indoor plumbing and running water. And I have to say, Professor Gaines also was an actor, and he loves writing plays as well as ethnic studies. We have with us also the niece to our inventor of the stent technology, Nefertiti Williams. Nefertiti Williams, a young woman who has quite a lot going on with her. She is an entrepreneur, travels the world, excited about life, a student at UC Berkeley, and studying as well as teaching, sharing. She is also the daughter of Ruth Williams, whom our opera house in Bayview was named after, Ruth Williams Memorial Theater. And this young woman is passionate, caring, strong, diplomatic, and knows how to get her point across. And then we have Mr. Garrett Morgan IV. Am I right, sir? Garrett Morgan IV is the fourth generation of our Garrett Morgan, who invented the gas mask, who invented our three-way light on the corners of our streets, who invented the respirator, and so much more. This young man not only is a relative of an inventor, but quite an innovator himself, inventing sculptures. Is that right, sir?
Yes, yeah, sculptor.
Thank you. Yes, and moving up and standing on his own, but on the shoulders of his family's history and legacy. I welcome and give you our panelists for today, the second part of this event. Our panelists, please come forward, Kelly, and
All right.
making sure everything is set. Kelly, I turn it to you.
Thank you for that. And as we continue to celebrate this wonderful occasion to talk about our legacy and our history and the contributions that we've made, celebrating Black excellence and Black inventors and innovation. So panel, let's open it up to you. Dr. Cheryl Davis, let's begin with you. You talked about how, or at least Carolyn was talking about how you like to encourage children to read, to read, to read. And if they can read these bookmarks, what will they learn about famous inventors and men and women who, as we heard Captain Robert Monroe explain about the hidden figures, how they couldn't change society right then and there, but they could continue to contribute to the space race and to our legacy of putting not only people on the moon, but being able to travel to far and distant places beyond Earth's atmosphere. What is this going to do, these bookmarks, for the children that you have always encouraged to read?
First, just thank you for being here, Mr. Wright, and then a huge thank you to Dr. Scott for organizing and coordinating and her persistence to make sure that folks are aware and learning. And also, I always forget to thank our partners at the library. So I also just want to thank Michael Lambert and Shauna Sherman for their support. There are a couple things that, as you were talking, that I would say off top, right? For me, the idea and importance of reading, I think I'm so focused on young people is because we want to create the love and the spark and really have everybody consider themselves readers. I want everybody to read, but unfortunately, without things like the Black Inventors bookmark, sometimes people do not see themselves, right? They do not believe or understand themselves to be readers, to be inventors, to be innovative, right? Because we get caught into the stereotypes. So often when folks think about wanting to do work in sports, they think they have to be an athlete, but they forget there are sports anchors, folks who are doing work like you are, Mr. Wright, or there are the sports medicine or the marketing or the campaign. I think the idea is that we need to broaden who we see ourselves as, that yes, we love our entertainers, we love our athletes, but that folks need to understand and see that as a people, we are more than that. That Black excellence resonates beyond that. And unfortunately, if we don't read it, we won't see it. Because we know that before Black News Channel, there wasn't a place necessarily to get that kind of focus, attention, and celebration of the Black intellect, right? The ability to be a thinker, to be a scientist, to be able to write. So a lot of these things are lost. And so the bookmark represents the ability, the fact that you almost couldn't fit it all on the bookmark, right? That there is a wealth of information out there, and that hopefully that bookmark sparks not just for young people, but for adults alike. And I'm grateful to hear about the work that Dr. Scott has been able to forge here with Dr. Gaines to be able to encourage not just not just elementary and high school students, but college students. I think about how much of this I didn't know till I was a full-grown woman about the stoplight, about the stint, all of these different things. And so for me, reading, sparking that interest at a young age is the seed to make sure that we get more scientists, that we get more pilots, that we get more sculptors, that we get more educators. I've recently been reading about how integration, we lost Black educators, right? That once we did integration, Black teachers were given their pink slips because schools didn't think, white schools didn't believe that the parents would want Black teachers in there. So we went from having 35 to 50% Black educators in our schools to less than 7%. And we can see how that's played out with the academic achievement of our young people. And so for me, the idea that we need to get back to celebrating and highlighting and loving Black history beyond February is what that bookmark represents.
Absolutely. Dr. Davis, thank you for that. It's good to see you again, too. And Dr. Gaines, Dr. Frederick Gaines, you heard Dr. Sherrill just recently, just a moment ago, talk about you and the work that you've been doing there at San Mateo. I remember meeting you, and you had undergone COVID, yet while you were undergoing COVID, there were still students lining up to hear from you, to school them on the history, the Black history that contributes to the greater history of America and the world. First of all, I had to bring that into the mainstream because it shows the dedication that I believe everyone has coming to the table to talk about this. And so kudos to you again. And yet, just talk to me about how rich Black history is and how much of a contribution it makes in all of our textbooks, as it should be given and taught throughout our country.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, man. I was wondering if we were going to remember me, but thank you for the prayers at that time during COVID. I really appreciate it. And Dr. Scott in the library, thank you guys for this. This is an awesome way to entice these bookmarks. They're powerful because that it's amazing because they're simple yet profound because they entice you to want to read. So to just give people an introduction to an inventor, I hope will entice them to read and to go get more information. So I think that this bookmark really represents Black brilliance in areas that we don't normally talk about because of the negative stereotypes. We don't normally hear about African Americans in technology and science and mathematics, but we've been doing it for a long time, from the very beginning. We were the first to do math and science. And so I think that these bookmarks are in a way symbolic of how exciting math and science can be in our community, but it's also symbolic of how much we as a people need to learn about our contributions in math and science. And for me here at College of San Mateo, what we do in the community every day, the judge said something about Ubuntu. And what we do in the classroom is we create the environment of Ubuntu, where students from all different backgrounds, Asian, African American, Latinos, Caucasian students, or I would say European, ethnic European students, gather in the same place. And we create this environment of Ubuntu, where we are community, that we are family. And so in that environment, we learn about the history that many of them have never been taught about African Americans and our contributions. I love the idea that the bookmarks will give us an opportunity to introduce Black history to people who would normally take the class. They wouldn't be in the classroom, but they'll be able to look at these bookmarks wherever they are in San Francisco, in schools, elementary schools, in the libraries, and also in some of the college environment. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Yeah, and thank you for what you do there at San Mateo, teaching and reaching the
hearts and minds of young people from all across walks of life. I want to bring in Nefertiti Williams. I'm delighted to meet you and have you on, Nefertiti. It's a really an amazing story of what your family has contributed to the field of medicine. And I'd like you to come in and just talk about the shoes you now walk in terms of the shoulders you stand upon as you seek to continue to elevate the conversation and the awareness of Ubuntu, as well as being those flowers in the garden of life that are not weeds to be drawn up and thrown away, but they're seeds of greatness. And that's been supplanted in your life as well. Talk to me about the Black inventor in your life who went on to actually create a medical device that saves lives.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Wright. Thank you, Dr. Scott, for this invitation, for the San Francisco Human Rights Commission and the San Francisco Public Library for just continuing this conversation and uplifting this very, very important Black history, specifically in San Francisco for my family, who started with my grandmother, who came to San Francisco and was very active as an activist and in the housing, as well as the arts and culture of the city. And so my uncle, Eric Williams, who came up under her in the Bayview Hunters Point neighborhood in San Francisco. And if anybody knows about Bayview Hunters Point and how we are represented there and how much of San Francisco views the area, it's very well known for a lot of violence and negativity surrounding much of the African-American community there. So I think it's so important that we know that these people who are intellectuals, when we think about what does it mean to be an intellectual and who are intellectuals, that some of them came from our very own communities and our own families. And for me, it's very empowering and uplifting. So my uncle Eric, who was a college student, but actually did not graduate college, went on to work in tech in the Silicon Valley. And he noticed very early on there, you know, that there were Black custodians and there were Black cooks in the kitchen, but there were no Black engineers, and that we were very underrepresented and marginalized in these spaces where he had a lot of ideas and he was constantly, his mind was just going, even as a child, he would take things apart and put them back together. And so he was always, in a way, a scientist in his own mind. But of course, not having been exposed to very many Black scientists and Black inventors, this wasn't something that he came out and said, I'm an inventor. He noticed that plastics had this ability, unlike some other materials, that, you know, plastics can be, one, easily formed into any shape, and also that it's disposable. And so two inventions that he came out with, two life-saving inventions. One is a plastic heart stent, where they used to use actually pig parts for this particular piece of the heart stent that he was able to fashion in plastic. And so he's down as a US patent for this heart stent. And then a second invention that he came out with, which is called the dental dove, which also was very instrumental in preventing cross-contamination with dental implements that are usually made of steel, and they can clean them and try to sanitize and disinfect them. But the only really surefire way is to replace the piece with a disposable piece, which is this dental dove. So he became very active in plastics and finding solutions to issues that had been doctors and scientists and people who had degrees and, you know, all kind of, I guess you could say, prestigious titles that he did not carry, but that he was able to bring these two very instrumental things to science. And, you know, knowing that this person, my uncle, first of all, my father's brother, but also someone from my community, Bayview Hunters Point, has been able to make such an impact on society and the medical world and the science and science has been very uplifting and instrumental to me. And I think it's important because we're in this very relevant time where we're talking about critical race theory and we're talking about, you know, critical pedagogy in general. And as an educator, as well as someone who seeks to become more educated, you know, it's very important that we have this culturally relevant, you know, these conversations and bring these inventions and these scientists and these people who have influence, just not, these inventions do not just impact and help Black America. They're impacting and helping all of America and all of the people who in the past, specifically with the heart stent, this surgery would be something that only a small amount of people could get to because there's a limited amount of pieces or parts to perform the surgery. Well, now with this plastic piece that can be duplicated so many times, now more people can get this bypass surgery, and it's life-saving for Americans everywhere. Of course, it's not just serving people in our communities, but beyond. So I think it's a part of the conversation that needs to continue, and that we need to make it our business as the African-American community, those of us who are in education and those of us who are in other places where we have platforms, is to constantly be pushing this information out to those who are already studying it and to those who may find an interest in it once they learn that, yes, we are in these places, and yes, we are making these really impactful contributions. And I think that, you know, again, knowing that someone like this came from Bayview Hunters Point and in my own family has really, you know, pushed me to want to learn more and want to share more as I'm able to gain these different platforms. And once again, thank you to Dr. Scott, the San Francisco Human Rights Commission, and the San Francisco Public Library for this opportunity to be a part of this discussion.
Awesome.
Nefertiti, that's awesome. I mean, I'm smiling from ear to ear because it's what your uncle has been able to accomplish is life-saving, life-affirming, and life-giving. And it's impacting, like you said, not only Black Americans, but all Americans. And then I would go even further to which you stated, and I'll just echo again, it's affecting the world. Mm-hmm. And from Bayview Hunters Point, a place that I've been to and frequented and really enjoy, can't wait to get back to visit everybody in San Francisco. But look at the wonderful things that have been developed throughout our legacy, throughout our history, where people say, can anything good come out of Bayview Hunters Point? Yeah. Yeah. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Oh, yeah. So anyway, don't let me go to preaching, but I want to bring in Garrett Morgan right now. Garrett, another, you are the, wow, you're the, I don't know where to begin with you, Garrett, because every time I go by a stoplight, I keep thinking a brother made that. And when I was in the Army and going through my training for chemical warfare training, we put on a gas mask. And I said, oh, that same brother named Garrett Morgan made that. So talk to me about the legacy that Garrett Morgan has placed on, as we heard from Nefertiti, the legacy going through her family, and now the legacy going through your family from the great inventor, Garrett Morgan.
Well, first, I'd like to thank everybody for allowing me to be in this space. I'd like to thank the Reverend Scott. I'd like to thank yourself, Kelly. And I think as far as like the legacy of my grandfather, and well, actually, the other thing I'd like to add too is one thing I've been noticing or I've been thinking about as far as this, the bookmark, is that a lot of people have said that the bookmark is a symbol, and it is. The bookmark is a symbol for holding your place. You know, books are typically looked at as a symbol of knowledge, and this is a symbol of holding your place in that knowledge. But it's also a symbol of holding our place in history too. You know, and that's a big part of the legacy. I mean, when I think about what everybody in this panel is talking about, like their ancestors or people, things that they have done themselves, and I think about the importance of the value of the legacy and maintaining it and keeping it moving forward is also the importance of ensuring our future and seeing ourselves in that future. But it's also the courage that it takes to be the first to do something. And in a situation where, like Nefertiti was saying, where her uncle didn't necessarily have the background or the credentials, but he had the courage and the foresight, and he saw a need, and he had the courage to pursue like remedying something that was obviously a hole, or there was a gap there and there was a need to fix it. And that's the same thing with my great-grandfather, is that he saw a need, and his need was oftentimes the advancement of our people, but the advancement of humanity too, because I think we spoke a few times about that today, and the advancement of humanity in terms of, like you said, inventing the gas mask to make warfare, or to make the warfare safer, or chemical safer, or rescue safer, or anything like that, which later evolved into scuba gear, which is a whole exploratory like avenue of the gas mask, as well as the stoplight, which is also sort of a humanitarian invention that was basically came to him after seeing an accident and seeing that there needed to be something to fill that gap, which speaks to the courage of the time that he lived in to see a hole and to be more committed to plugging that hole than he was to, basically just living a good life and doing something safe. It takes a lot of courage to respond to something that you see as a necessity in our society, as well as something that is also contributing to our history as people, the past as well as the present.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a big part of what I see this project doing. And as far as my personal life, my grandfather, like everyone else's family member or notable historical figure, my grandfather has given me the opportunity to not just be courageous in how I live my own life, but he's also given me the opportunity to see the value of opening the door for other people if I can, and I'm an artist, and I wouldn't be an artist if my grandfather didn't contribute what he contributed to the world. He is definitely an inspiration to me to be curious and brave with what I'm doing and what I want to do, so that's, I think that's my my perspective on that. And I really, again, I thank you for allowing me to share this space with you guys, and I've learned so much. And I love that this is Bookmarks. I think that's the capitalism, is having like a place where you're stopping, you're learning for a second, and then continuing on when you can come back to it. Like it's like the break in the middle of the educational book is really wonderful.
I love it as well. Thank you for putting it that way, Garrett. It's so important to the way you broke that down. I can see the artistry in you and the sculptor in you, because you're able to look at it from a standpoint of saying, how does this place us in history? Mm. And it's a bookmark about our place in history. I don't want to overlook anyone. Carolyn, this is amazing with the panelists that we have and what they're bringing to the table. I want to put a question out there for everybody to look at. So we're talking about a bookmark, and we're talking about our place in history, and it being a placeholder. But is it also a touchstone and a stepping stone, getting back to what Nefertiti was saying about how we expand, and how Dr. Davis was saying how we read, and then Dr. Gaines talking about how we teach? Are these bookmarks also touch points, stepping stones to having other people have a conversation who may never see or understand our contributions to history, but because they saw that placeholder, a bookmark about a Black inventor, will it make them think and become cognitive about, wait a minute, it's not just whites who built America, it's Native Americans, it's Black Americans, it's all God's children who contributed to this world, because they took what God gave them and they utilized it for the greater good of all. I'll put that out to all of you.
Well, I'll start then. I think that's a great way to look at it, and that's kind of how I see it too. Is like it is a way to look forward. It's a way to hold our place, but it is a way to look at the actual bookmark. Look at all the names on it, and it. What it does for me is it kind of opens this door. It sort of sends you into a rabbit hole of curiosity, because what it says beyond our culture, a lot of the stuff we already know, but beyond our culture, what it says is, look at how much is out there that I don't know, and I think going back to what I was saying before about curiosity sort of steering a lot of my personal thought, I think it does with a lot of people. And when you look at how many people you've never heard of, or you've never seen, or aren't taught in books, and you just see an infinite list where you're like, wow, that, the amount that I don't know is amazing. And the amount that I could learn about a subject that I'm interested in based on the fact that there are so many Black inventors, Black contributors that I have no idea about. I think that's pretty inspiring,
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll jump in and just add that when you note that it's on a bookmark too. I know for me, I've had like small keychains, maybe even bookmarks or T-shirts or small things that resonated with me throughout my lifetime that I saw in my childhood. I remember having a keychain that says, some people make things happen, some people watch things happen, and others wonder what just happened.
Yeah.
And it's such, I always decided at that point I was going to be a person who made things happen. And it was just like that one small little keychain, but it was because I would see it over and over again that it resonated with me at different points. It would always come back to me. I want to be a person who makes things happen. So I do believe that like having something like a tidbit of information or a name of a person or some information about an invention that you may not have had any idea about before, but you'll see it over and over again. Because with a bookmark, you do use it over and over again, that it would stick with me and that it would stick with other people who have an opportunity to see it and hold it. And then, like was already previously stated, spark some type of curiosity or interest or pique, the idea of one, again, we're not always uplifted for scientific invention. So specifically that it is not about sports or entertainment, but that it is about science and inventions, that I think that it does bring a filler for or a gap that has been left unfilled up to this point. And then also just that it's a type of fun thing, a type of easy way to have an introduction into this conversation. And as we know, it's a very valuable conversation to be had, because if it were not, this whole thing about critical race theory, trying to keep it, it would not be this effort to keep it out, right? So we want to just always make sure that we're using every platform in every way possible to introduce this very valuable information. And I think a bookmark is just a sweet, sweet way to do that in a very, fun way, easy way, but really will have a prolific impact and be very useful.
I like that. And Nefertiti, you and Garrett just jogged something else. Last Monday, I had the honor to go to the White House, and the president and vice president were actually celebrating Black History Month. And one of the things, since we're talking about what we do in the sciences as inventors, we've been dealing with this pandemic. I know you've dealt with it in San Francisco. Who hasn't been touched by this COVID pandemic? But I was really struck and elated to know that the president took time out to actually acknowledge the Black Coalition Against COVID-19. And Dr. Reed Tuckson, who is on our program quite a bit, is just he's a brilliant man who's been able to do some brilliant things for all the right reasons. And what I'm doing, I'm contemporizing what we've seen Black innovators do and inventors do, and doctors and scientists and lawyers and yeah, there's the music, there's the acting, but the science and the doctors and the lawyers, what they've been able to do in terms of bringing it home. And Dr. Gaines, that leads me to you, because in this contemporary world, as Nefertiti was just talking about critical race theory, it just boggles the mind that there are some people who are against history being taught. I don't want to get into a political debate about it, but from your vantage point as a scholar, as a professor of this wonderful history of ours, what is the big deal? Why can't people understand that if they can learn our history, it's their history and it's our history as a nation, doesn't it enrich our children and our future generation?
Great question. Absolutely, it enriches all of us. And, when in the ethnic studies environment, the beauty about it is going into the classroom and sharing our histories, mutually sharing our lived experiences, sharing the lived experience of the Chinese, living the living experience of Latinos, of Chicanos, of Polynesians. These are beautiful cultures. It's a beautiful thing. We create a safe place where we can get into a room and talk about our histories and share. I think the great fear for many people is that the discomfort that happens in a classroom when you have to talk about tough things. You can't cure things you can't talk about. If you don't want to talk about you have cancer and you just want to pretend that it's a scratch, you can't even begin to heal. And so I think what's important for me as a teacher is creating an environment that's safe so that people can feel free about being vulnerable and talking about things that are tough. And I think in the long run, it benefits all of our children. I think there's this fear that somehow we're going to create guilt, and that's the purpose of the lesson. It's not the purpose. It's not to create guilt. It is to enlighten. It is to say to them, we are all part of God's, children, and here's the contributions that we've made. But here are the mistakes that we've made. If you believe in democracy, well, let's look at how we practice. Where have we come up short? And then I always say to my students, it's going to be in your hands. You're going to have to take this thing and move it forward. And if we don't give you the background, then you won't have the tools. And I think people are threatened by the tension that is created in the classroom sometimes when we are talking about our histories, and it's not all pretty. But I think it's really important that we face it. And I think that it's really important that we continue to say, this bookmark is a great opportunity for you to say, it's a non-threatening way for you to introduce history so that people are not defensive. I mean, one of my greatest tasks in the classroom is creating that environment where people are not defensive, because they're going to learn things that are contrary to some of the things they've been taught. And how do we have a discussion about it when there's so much tension? And I think that's what America is. We're under a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of tension. And I think the idea is to just get rid of it. We don't have to even talk about it, and it'll go away. But we have to persist, because if we don't, it's not going to go away. It's going to be like a cancer that keeps eating away at us. And at some point, that cancer is going to show. And so I just want to encourage all of America and all classrooms, all teachers and educators. Hey, be gracious, be kind, be Ubuntu, but we have to talk about it. And let's share our histories, and let's celebrate our diversity, because it's a beautiful thing. My wife is half Chinese. I have kids that are Chinese and African American. And then I come from the indigenous Chickasaw tribe in Oklahoma. And so I'm all of those things. How do we get into an environment where we can talk about it, even when it's tense? And I think that's what we're avoiding. We're avoiding the tension.
Yeah. Dr. Cheryl Davis, I want to bring you in because this is a wonderful conversation we're having about just our excellence, Black excellence, as well as Black inventors and our innovations, and what Dr. Gaines has just talked about, and our guests Garrett Morgan and Nefertiti Williams. They've all talked about this wonderful bookmark that's so simple and so impactful, and it doesn't cause anyone any harm to use a bookmark and read it and realize, oh, I just got a glimpse of greatness, and it didn't harm me. It didn't hurt me. If anything, it opened up my mind to realize, oh, there's more that I can explore here. So Dr. Davis, I want to bring you in again to talk about the San Francisco Human Rights Commission and the San Francisco Public Library getting behind this. And I dare say that this is something that can grow. So be prepared for people once they really get a handle on this, about how much value this can bring to our country.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it just speaks to what Dr. Scott has done speaks to the rich history and the knowledge of the ancestors, right? So when I think about this, we talk about it being so simple, but so powerful. I go to really the role of religion, but in the spiritual sense, right? In terms of the role that the church played, and you were talking earlier about, don't let you start preaching, but the idea of the sanctity of the space and the role that it played, right? So I often laugh and talk about when I was growing up, there was a thing called the mourner's bench, where, folks would sit on the bench and they would cry and they would have their emotions, but our folks knew that simple act was therapeutic, right? They didn't need science. They knew it from within their soul that was a necessary piece. We think about the role of it in song and music, that now there are studies that talk about the importance of moaning and humming and singing, right? The science of it all, but that the ancestors understood something as simple as humming a tune was enough to calm the spirit and the soul, right? And so this idea of really, and Nefertiti talked about critical race theory, and someone put it in the chat. A lot of what we learned historically and the challenges, when you think about when a lot of these things were invented, it wasn't because the schools necessarily poured that into the young people. It was because the community, the family, right? They took the little that they had and they made a lot out of it. And so as we get into this movement, as we get into this, we have to go back to understanding, as Dr. Gaines was explaining, the power of collaboration, the power of community, right? The power of organizing in the truest sense. There are these studies that talk about collective impact model and collaboration. And I'd say the NAACP and Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, long before somebody decided to coin a phrase, were modeling what collaboration across race, ethnicity, understanding our history, understanding astronomy, and being able to look at the stars and find your way. Those things were small. They knew it as the Big Dipper, Little Dipper, North Star, but they knew that it was taking them to freedom. And in the same way, the bookmark is liberating in that sense, right? In the same way that our ancestors had to tell us about Langston Hughes, right? It wasn't something that I necessarily learned in my classroom, but every Black History Month in church, I had to learn Langston Hughes and Maya Angelou and James Weldon Johnson and James Weldon Johnson and James Baldwin. All of those things seem like nothing, but the idea that you had to get up on a Sunday, learn a speech, say that speech without messing up, without the fear of your mother or your grandmother or your auntie looking at you for missing a word. Very small, but it taught you public speaking. It taught you how to memorize a speech. It taught you reading comprehension. All of those things are so rooted in the history and the culture of Black folks. But if we don't own that excellence, and if we hide it, to again coin some phrases, hide it under a bushel, right? If we don't let that light shine, as Fannie Lou Hamer used to sing about, then we're not going to be able to show the way forward.
Oh, that's so good. This is a rich conversation. We could go on, but I want to be fair, and we've gone a little bit over our time in terms of our format. But I want to read some questions now from our audience. If there are any questions out there that our audience has, I should have forewarned you to go and write in the questions so that I can read them. I've got my glasses on so I can see the fine print. And while I'm waiting for some of you to send your questions in, I just want to remind us right now that to me personally, what this bookmark symbolizes is not just our greatness, but our legacy of contributing to the world when the world didn't want us. And we've seen it in war-torn areas. We've seen it all over the world. I traveled to Africa before the turn of the century in December 1999. And it was to go there as the president of Benin, West Africa, a slave trading nation throughout the transatlantic slave trade, and the president of Ghana, another slave trading nation throughout the transatlantic slave trade. Both were there to apologize for the misdeeds of the ancestors. And basically, I'm going to truncate this because I'm waiting for the questions to come in. This is the filler. This is where an anchor ad libs. But I'm trying to put some truth on this as well. Ultimately, what President Matthew Carrico and President Gerald Rawlings did, they apologized to the African diaspora for the misdeeds of the ancestors. They didn't initiate the slave trade, but they perpetuated it by participating in it and selling their own into captivity. And so they were there to apologize. And I will never forget Matthew Carrico, who had been a dictator for many, many years. And when communism fell, he made Benin a democratic republic. And then he found faith in God. I'm going to be very open and candid about this. He found direct faith in a nation that wasn't really pro anything except it practiced voodoo and animism and had some faith. But he found his faith in God and was introduced to his faith in Christ. And he apologized before this august body of people, about 300 plus people there for this wonderful event. And he apologized in the name of Christ, and then he asked for forgiveness. And then after doing that, he went on to say, we must forge new ground to build reconciliation and transformation. It reminded me of Nelson Mandela, who wanted the same thing, reconciliation and transformation. But then I had a private audience with Matthew Carrico. And I said, Mr. President, now that you've made this apology, what's your message to America? And he looked at me and said, America is a beacon of hope. They should never forget that. And I said, more specifically, now that you've talked directly to African Americans, what's your message to them? And this is what I want us to get about this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful bookmark. He said, never see yourselves as victim, but as victors, because we see you as being the modern day Josephs who helped build the global economy we enjoy today. That right there is a statement that the entire world needs to know about the African-American place in history. We are modern day Josephs. Being the journalist that I was when I got back to Virginia, where I was working in Hampton Roads, Virginia, I went directly to Jamestown, the first settlement. And I asked the curators, could this experiment called America have survived without the input and contributions of Africans? And all of them shook their head and said, no way. It would have never happened, because we knew how to develop the cash crop, tobacco and cotton, and then our ingenuity. We had Nefertiti just talk about how her uncle didn't get a complete education. Well, we were Africans living in this country under duress, working in hard times, persevering through it, and not getting an education. But yet we educated the world by saving the world through our witty inventions. So let that be something to elevate as you continue to illuminate the world on the witty inventions of Black excellence. And now let me see if we have any questions here. I was ad-libbing, y'all. Come on, you got to help a brother out. Somebody give me a question up in here.
There's a question, Kelly, from Miss Cheryl Thornton. And may I read it for you, sir?
Yes, please, Carolyn. Please help me out.
Miss Cheryl Thornton asked this question. As redistricting is happening around the country, and we are studying reparations for Black residents in San Francisco, question is, how can we use bookmarks to teach America why reparations are needed? I would say judicial, and then to our educators, would you try tackling this? Chief Justice Carolyn Wright, your thoughts. Honorable Judge Tanya Wright, your thoughts, and then our educators. I think, Carolyn, you're muted. And Tanya, you can unmute yourself as well.
Thank you. I think information is power. I think to the extent that you are making the argument for reparations, I think that all of the inventions, many of the inventions came about, quite frankly, because slaves were doing the work. And many times they were trying to make their own work easier. So many of these inventions came about simply because of the fact that they were being, they were spending hours upon hours with their labor. And so it helped them to be able to be more productive, possibly to get a little more rest. And so I think to the extent that you're making your argument about reparations, I think that you have to go back into history, and these bookmarks, certainly, it's a great deal of research that has gone into them. And it's research in the area of STEAM and STEM. And so with this technology, this is proof of the kind of, value that was given to America. And so.
Thank you, Carolyn. Tanya, Judge Tanya.
I can't really add anything significant to that. I think it is all about value. And I think sometimes that you have to demonstrate your own self-worth and your own value. And it's important that, something is trying to disrupt me, but it's important that you champion yourself and you champion your own cause. And I think in that sense, with wide distribution of any information, if you want it to get out, you have to have a means of communicating it. And the bookmarks are just an excellent means of communication. So in that sense, if it's something good that you need to get out, the bookmarks are certainly an avenue to explore it for reparations or anything else of that nature.
May I say this before our educators jump in? One of the things I've thought about and I'm on a journey towards, I know we can give bookmarks to one another and pour them out into our community, but I've learned if they don't get into the hands of the decision makers, we can talk, we can march, we can sing, and we'll be just like we've been doing these last 300 years. I believe there needs to be a way where the leaders of our community, leaders of our city, the decision makers have, this is a series of 6 and I'm working on number 7, but they need this information and it should be a packet, a part of, I know when I went in as a commissioner, I was given this huge, thick binder to read. It should be a part of a packet that our leaders get. I have also heard from our captain of the police department. He would love to make it a part of the sensitivity training for the police department. Those things, to me, that's when it gets in the hands, the head, the heart, the eyes, the minds, the ears, and discussion around what they're reading. That's when I believe we will see a better change, a better viewpoint, and conversations in a more productive, sensitive, caring, considerate way. They would consider the facts. But I believe if we can work towards that movement and helping our leaders to get the information, because many of them have said it's just, Michael was the first proof for me, historian, and he didn't know half of it. And that was only one bookmarker with only a few names on it, 50. And so we know how deep our history is buried, hidden. And so to uncover it and shine a light on it, that light needs to be shone in the eyes, the hands of those that are making decisions. Can we hear from our educators?
I just wanted to add, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
There is a brother by the name of Sean Rochester who wrote a really amazing book. It's called The Black Tax. And he does the numbers. He's brilliant. He's a mathematician. And he estimated what slavery has cost, what has Jim Crow cost, our value to this country in the numbers, and not just emotionalism, but numbers, and I think it'll blow you away. And those of you who are looking to talk about reparations, I just think that's a phenomenal book to use, those statistics to help you in your argument. Sean Rochester.
Dr. Gaines, let me say I absolutely agree with you, because anytime you're in a court of law, you can talk about harm.
Yes, ma'am.
But harm doesn't get you over your burden. You have to show damages.
Amen.
And unless you can show damages, then harm is excused. And so I certainly think that the numbers and the manner in which someone is able to show the damages involved will make the case for reparations.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Justice. Dr. Davis?
Well, I will just, a couple of things just with regards to, I really appreciate the last comments from the Chief Justice. I would say one of the things we've really been wrestling with here in San Francisco as we do our local reparations conversations is just that, right? With Prop 209 and other things, really limiting our ability to call out race as the factor. What is the redress? What is the harm that is documented that we can account for, whether that is the impact of redevelopment or the impact of the injustice in the schools and how it disproportionately impacted Black youth. And so with that, my response to how those things can be used, I'm a very concrete, tangible, I was a kindergarten teacher when I was teaching. So it all boils down to, I would say in kindergarten, it's every 5 to 10 minutes because those attention spans are not, I can't sit and lecture for an hour. So what are the activities? What are the tangibles? What's the thing that I can do that's taking that bookmark from being a bookmark to being something that is recalled, right? And so it depends on what it is that we want to recall. Do we want to remember that folks have the ability to be anything that they want to be? And so that's the thing that we want to highlight. Is it about really calling out very specific inventors and inventions? And I would just say to Cheryl's question, let's really think about it. You're talking about redistricting. You're talking about, really, how do we amplify the voices of Black people so that those voices do not get watered down or that they understand their role in decision making? And so I would say that then in that case, you want to go to the challenges because we're celebrating those inventors, but out of context, right? So to the point that was made earlier about like, it was out of necessity or it was out of, saving themselves, right, and proving their worth, because sometimes, the court jester made people laugh, not because he wanted to make people laugh, but because he wanted to live, right? And so if he wasn't funny, he was going to lose his life. And so in terms of Black folks having to prove their value and their worth, right, they were always trying to think up, like, how can I prove that I don't mess with my fingers, don't mess with my hands, don't mess with my mind, because I'm a valuable part of society. So I think that really having folks understand with regards to redistricting that if they don't elevate their ideas and thoughts, if they don't amplify their voices, what could be lost, right? I think that is the piece. And to talk about and it's not going to be easy. A lot of the inventors were inventing in a time when they probably couldn't even just walk into the store and buy the supplies they needed to make the invention, right? So they probably had to invent the supplies before they could even create the invention. So I think that context of understanding that it's not like today where they just went online, ordered something from Amazon, had it delivered to their house, and then created a thing. So I think that context of understanding what that is, and that we need folks to jump up today and help to make that shift. Because if folks think that we have arrived, they have not been paying attention to what is going on. We are definitely better off than we were in years past. Like, there's no denying that, but that there is still room to do more. The fights that we see happening around critical race theory, the fights that we see around having folks be seen as I feel like we still need to have folks walking around with the sign that say, I am a man, right? Like, this idea that folks have been dehumanized in some way. So we've got to have people understand the context of those signs, that, a lot of times we see people use them as a backdrop on their Zoom cameras, and I don't think they even have context for what that means. And so, drilling down on that stoplight, the question would be, when he invented that stoplight, was he even allowed to drive the streets in a certain, there are so many other pieces that we've got to unpack, and that it's not just about the invention, but it's the process to invent and to be free of mind. And I think that that's what you would want to really drill down on, Cheryl, in terms of redistricting.
Dr. Davis, if I could get in real quickly to add something. You were talking about not being able to take advantage of the things that Black Americans invented, which calls to mind Charles Drew, blood plasma.
Yeah.
And yet Charles Drew was not able to live because he wasn't allowed to use his own blood plasma that he invented for saving his life. And then to the point about how do you partner, how do you build upon the bookmark, corporate America has a responsibility in this. And it would be good to see if corporate America pursued a public-private partnership with San Francisco Human Rights Commission, Public Library. I don't know how that's possible, but it is possible. There's a place called Silicon Valley, very close to you. They owe a lot to people of color in terms of what they should be doing on social media. There are avenues to pursue and have discussions for making this small project this that fits in the palm of your hand and making it powerful and supported by corporate America, as well as legislators throughout all of America.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I am really looking forward. We're talking to folk that deal with our children in schools, asking them to help us make children-friendly bookmarks that appeal to the children, that they will love and just feel a part of and share and talk about more. Because when our children grow up learning this, as opposed to, as Dr. Davis said, many of us, and Judge Tanya said, we were adults when we started learning about some of these inventions, but our children can learn at an earlier age.
Yes.
And learn to love one another, accept one another, crossing boundaries of race and cultures. And that is another step of this. And as I said, hope, we don't hope for anything we already have. That's not hope. But for what we don't have, we hope for and do everything we can in our power as a part of the process, as we wait patiently for things to change and things to happen. Kelly?
Well, we have had a very stimulating, enlightening, and informative and empowering conversation for this day. It has enriched me personally. I hope it's enriched each and every one of you personally. And I thought all of our conversations from all of our panelists, I want to thank each and every one of you. And Carolyn, my friend, I want to thank you for the great work you're doing. And I want to thank the city of San Francisco, in particular, the Human Rights Commission and the San Francisco Public Library. Thank you for extending me this opportunity to be part of this. This is history making, and it's going to benefit people beyond what we do here now. So thank you again for letting me be part of this. Carolyn, I'll put it back over to you. Much love to you and God bless you all.
Thank you. I just want to say quickly, Women's Month this is, and Coretta Scott King said this: freedom and justice cannot be parceled out in pieces to suit political convenience. I don't believe you can stand for freedom for one group of people and deny it to others. And then she said this to women, and this is Women's Month. Women, if the soul of the nation is to be saved, I believe you must become its soul. And we are a part of making things happen and being a solution. And I'm just praying that God will continue to carry us forward, take this conversation, and not just keep it in our heads, our hearts, but let's do some things where we are for the world around us with it. Thank you again, Dr. Davis, HRC. Thank you again, Michael Lambert, and your team. Shauna, thank you so much. Jessica, thank you so much. Kelly, everyone. And if I can say now that we're at the end of this, my cousins, Chief Justice Carolyn Wright, Honorary Judge Tanya Wright, Kelly Wright, our dear friend, thank you. Professor Gaines, my husband's cousin, and so it's a family affair. But I cannot thank you all for being a part of this. I can't thank you enough, Dr. Cheryl Davis, for helping lift this off the ground, and Michael for helping lift this off the ground, and San Francisco again becoming a pace setter for truth, justice, and should I say the American way? But just for moving things God's way, the right way, to help make things right and better for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much to our panel, to Mr. Wright, and to the Reverend Dr. Carolyn Scott for this amazing project and these amazing bookmarks. We are going to end our program today with a couple of more songs from Domingo and Friends. To move us down to what's the song called again? Yeah, Ain't No Sunshine. That's where we'll start, and here we go. Thank you all.
And panelists, if you'll hold on after.
This is good information people need to know.
For a debriefing.
When you come to a traffic light and it says stop, do you know there was a Black man who invented that stoplight? His name was Garnett Morgan. And
Garrett.
Tim is over there playing away on that guitar, going to town, doing his thing. But there was another Black man who invented that guitar. And his name was Robert Fleming Jr. Just more information. As we go along, I'll tell you more stuff that you use every day and don't even know it. Okay.
The credits are going as well.
no sunshine when he's gone. It's not warm when he's away. Ain't no sunshine when he's gone, and his house just ain't no home anytime he goes away. Wonder this time where he's gone. Wonder if he's gonna stay. Ain't no sunshine when he's gone, and his house just ain't no home anytime he goes away. And I know, 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 I know. They ought to leave that man alone, but ain't no sunshine when it's gone. Ain't no sunshine when it's gone. House just ain't no home. He goes away. And I know, 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 I know. They ought to leave that man alone, but ain't no sunshine when he's gone. Ain't no sunshine when he's gone. Ain't no sunshine when he's gone, and his house just ain't no home anytime he goes away. Anytime he goes away. Anytime he goes away. Anytime he leaves me all alone. There ain't no sunshine when my baby's gone. Anytime he goes away. Anytime, anytime my baby goes away.
Good night, everyone. Good night. Thank you so much, panelists. God bless you all, and thank you for everyone that joined.
Thank you.
All right, so good night, everyone. Carolyn, my namesake, Tanny, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. The program it was absolutely awesome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so we will see everyone online. Captain Robert Monroe, you'll get a call and maybe we'll do a Zoom. But we will do this. Michael Lambert, give a shout out, please. HRC and SFPL. Thank you, Michael. I gotta cook you some greens and cornbread.
Much love, much love.
Ribs, yes. Yeah, thank you. I cannot say it enough, Nefertiti and Mr. Garrett Morgan, all of you.
Including me.
Thank you. So Shauna, thanks. We'll be ending. And Tanya and Carolyn, and you're the farthest away. I will be calling you immediately.
We look forward to it.
Yeah, so, and how is Aunt Alvora?
She is well at 97 and a half. She's doing well.
Thank you. Well, I'll call you right away. Dr. Davis, we're not going to do the debriefing here because Shauna needs to shut down. They have their schedule, for cleaning things up, and we'll come back together, Shauna, later. Text me when. All right. God bless you all.